Okay, go. Yeah.
All right. Hi, my name is Michelle Benfield, and I'm a social worker, a licensed master social worker. I graduated from Columbia University. My family has mental illness on both sides. My mother was a paranoid schizophrenic and also suffered from alcoholism. My grandmother on my dad's side also suffered from mental illness. I myself suffer from clinical depression. Um, when I'm in a psychotic moment, it's called major depression with psychotic features. And I had a crisis in 2011 on January 25th. After not having taken my medication for some time, I had a panic attack and believed that my son had been wounded and needed to get to the hospital. So I went to the hospital in a cab, panicked that something had happened to him. I was asked to leave the cab, was told my cab driver that I was waiting for someone, so they would pay the cab fare for me, because I believe someone was coming to pay the cab fare. Didn't happen. Cab driver called the police. The police responded. We were standing in front of a hospital. There, it was obvious that I was, lack of better words, delusional. And their response was to arrest me as opposed to, without reading me my rights, rather than taking me into the emergency room to seek treatment, they decided to take me to the precinct. They shackled my hands, they put handcuffs on my hands and leg shackles on my feet, dragged me from the police car into the precinct. They did a search and frisk, or frisk me in front of the sergeant, who was in front of several men. Then they put me in a holding cell, kept me there for a couple of hours. When I refused to have myself fingerprinted and told them that they'd have to do a background check, again, a delusional moment, because post 9/11, everybody has to go into the computer once you're arrested. This is my understanding now. And they decided that they were going to take me to East Elmhurst Hospital, as opposed to the precinct. I mean, it's supposed to the hospital that was just around the corner that they just arrested me in front of. Why? Because I worked at that hospital. So I guess they presumed that the hospital would be biased in my favor, as opposed to taking me to the hospital. So they took me to the hospital that they felt that would give them, I believe, I'm speculating, a favorable or an unbiased report. This is one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. One, because I have always worked well with police officers. I've always respected their profession. My father himself was a former police officer in his country, which is kind of ironic. I really think it's sad that I was held in shackles for 36 hours without any thought of how my mental illness had impacted this whole situation. The fact that I speculate that in the NYPD's computers, every time my name was in the computer for responding to an incident where I was ill, there were 2 suicide attempts where they had come to my home. That they believed I was what they call 730, which is the code for a mentally ill person or emotionally disturbed person. They came there because they wanted to assist me. And in this situation, they wanted to penalize me for being ill. I think that the officers that I initially encountered were more professional and had some type of dealings with the situation in the past. At least they were more sensitive. Or at least I was not in a state where I could not function. I think the combination is dangerous not only for the mentally, emotionally disturbed person, but for the police officers also. I think that they need to have some type of clinical training. I think there needs to be a mobile crisis team where they, if necessary, have to arrest. But arrest is not going. That arrest should follow. That treatment should be the emergent issue. A suicide is no different than a psychotic incident in that an emergent issue is something that puts life and limb in danger. If a police officer is to respond, it shouldn't be with a gun, because the psychotic person can't kill you unless they're armed. Their psychosis is killing them. It's a chemical imbalance. And I think that the indignity is that you have youth officers who respond to youth youth interventions. You have domestic violence officers who respond to domestic violence incidents, and those incidents have gone down because of their training and their specialization. So if we were to have mental health police officers responding to mental health, or what they call 730s, or emotionally disturbed persons episodes, I think that there would be a greater response in favor of the mentally ill person, and there'll be a decrease in the violence that affects not only the police officers but the person who's ill.